So, good morning. Today is the 15th of Sivan, and I have no idea what it is. 4th of June? 4th of June. Almost the 4th of July. Almost. So we talked about Abba and Ima last time. So let's go just a little bit back.
Where are we?
V'natati kishmechem beitam.
Where?
We're in Gimel. We're in the middle. V'natati kishmechem beitam, right after the parentheses. So again, we said that the most important part of walking with Hashem is to become unified in one. Yitkalel be'echad. And how is this possible? It's done through the mitzvahs as explained somewhere else. And this is what it means. Vet mitzvotai, you're in the midbar. We're in Vayikra still. Go back a little. That's what happens when you put a few books together in the same volume. Okay, so Memchet. Okay. Yeah, a little bit more. Yeah, this Membet. So. One back. One back. So by doing mitzvahs, we're forcing the Or Ein Sof, the infinite light, into the vessels, and that's called making. Gadol ha'maaseh min ha'oseh, v'tzedakah, v'lechen nikra kol uvda b'shon asiyah, and then all actions called asiyah, doing, which really means to force. So we said that this is a whole new vision of our world, that our world is like a world of forcing Hashem to do things. Like by doing mitzvahs, we're forcing Him to do all kinds of things, and so on. And then in the continuation of Bechukotai, at the beginning of the parsha, it says, it will give your rains in their proper times, in their seasons. What does Gishmei mean? Here it means Torah. Because it's like Torah is likened to rain. The rains come down in what we call the might. Because we said that really the water is loving kindness, but it's coming down in droplets. And in the Torah it says that it was given in 5 sounds, 5 voices, as it were. It divided into 5 sounds. Perush Hei Chasadim HaMagdilim. And these 5 sounds, so he said here it's backwards from what we would think. We think that the water is the loving kindness, and that it comes down in droplets, that's the might. But here it says no, the fact that it comes down in 5 different droplets, or 5 different aspects, these 5 different sounds, that is actually the chesed. That is actually already the what causes it to grow, to sweeten. We said that has to do with the fact that the more the rain is droplets, the smaller the droplets, the more it affects the ground and affects the growth of whatever is growing in that ground. And the idea is, and we said, and these are really, by Abba they were still Gevura, and when he gives them to Ima, he makes them into Chesed. So we explained that last week. We said that the father has to have a lot of composure, like Gevura, and when he gives this composure to his wife, he's an onispilus. He doesn't get excited by the whole situation. It sweetens the gvura in the mother, and that becomes chesed. And now we get the explanation of what this all means. Perush. כי משה שמע כל התורה בקול אחד, כמו שכתוב, ואלוקים יעננו בקול, לפי שמשה היה בחינת תורה בעצמו. Moshe Rabbeinu, he heard the entire Torah with just one voice. Hashem talked to him, as it were, in one sound, in one voice. As it says, that God answered him with a voice, one. Why? Because Moshe Rabbeinu, he himself is, as we said in the beginning, he's the light of Abba. He's the father principle himself. He's the chokhmah. He's the bittul. The whole ability that he has to receive the Torah is because of his bittul, because of his connection to Abba. Bittul is self-notification. Ach Yisrael lo haya be'efshari lekabel. Abba is chokhmah. Chokhmah is always bittul. That's why the infinite light always, in every world, it first of all sets down in Abba. It sets down in Abba because that's where there's enough of a vessel, there's so much self-nullification that the infinite light can be contained somehow. But by the Jewish people, that's where it says that it came down in 5 voices. Because Moshe Rabbeinu didn't need it in 5. Again, what does it mean? That it was broken down into different not sections, but different aspects, you would say. Because by the Jewish people, they couldn't understand everything at once. It was too much. So you had to get 5 different aspects of it. As for Israel, נתחלק על ידי הגבורות לאבא לבחינת 5 קולות, וזהו פלג אלוקים מלא מים. And that's what it means, because Elokim has 5 letters, and therefore these 5 letters, they correspond to the 5 gvurot. Right? Elokim is the name of Gvura, it's the name of might. So these are the 5, call it tributaries, through which the voice went, it sounded through, and so they heard it in 5 voices. In any case, we still need to see this is the Kabbalah behind it, and we still have to get the Chasidut in a second. פירוש, מה שמתפלג מבחינת אלוקים, מבחינת הגבורות מלא מים, באמת הם חסדים שיכולים לקבל. So by dividing into 5 different tributaries, as we call them, that's why the Jewish people could receive the Torah. ועל ידי גשמכם בחינת התורה נעשה כל דודי דופק פתחי לי, שיהיה ליבו פתוח, שיוכל להיות בנפשו בחינת האהבה, על ידי בחינת התורה מגדל. And so, once the Torah itself is might, because it also sounded like might. It was something that was very powerful. So, even though it was very mighty, because it was divided into these tributaries, as it were, these aspects of Torah, so it could be accepted by the people. And when it's accepted, it becomes, like we said, like by Imam. Imam here is the mother. The mother here is the Jewish people. Usually the mother is the land, when we said that the rain comes down and waters the earth. So it's Mother Earth. But here we're talking about the people themselves, and what we're talking specifically is about their ability to receive the Torah, which is like rain, but now it's coming down in small droplets, in smaller droplets, and this allows the Torah to make them grow. Hamegadil, this love that the person feels, that someone is watering him. To water is to give love. What do we learn from early Kabbalah? Early Kabbalah, they didn't call it chesed, they called it gedula. You heard this, right? Because the pasuk says, "L'cha Hashem hagdula v'hagvura." So it wasn't called chesed, it was called gedula. Why is it called Avram? Adam hagadol ba'anakim. Right, it's largesse. So, but it also means in Hebrew, far from largesse, it also means legadel, to make something grow. That's why Avram is called Adam Gadol Ba'anakim. So there's 2 explanations. Gadol Ba'anakim is that he's the great among giants. But there's also an explanation that he raises giants. He makes them grow. Gadol Ba'anakim. He's great about it. He has a special. How does he do this? He showers people with love. And when he showers them with love, that's when they grow. That's why children need so much love, because without the love, they don't grow. They grow physically, but they don't grow emotionally, intellectually. So the same thing had to be done for the Jewish people. So he cut it up into pieces. So right away, what would you say the 5 pieces are? Like if we didn't know yet what he's going to say. The 5 chumashim. Okay. And in fact, we know that the Maharal talks about it. The Rebbe also talks about it a lot, many times. In fact, it was a sicha from this week, from Baaloscha, that he talks about the Rashi that says that Chumash Bamidbar should not have started with the census. It should have started with chapter 9. And chapter 9 is what we read in the Parsha, and that's the story of the Pesach that they did in the desert, in the wilderness. What's such a big deal that they did a Pesach in the wilderness? Because it was the only time in 40 years that they did a Pesach. So on the face of it, so Rashi says, but if it would have started with that, it was a big deal that they made a Pesach, Pesach Sheni. So that would have been a gnut l'Yisrael. It would have been something derogatory, actually. Why? Because it was the only time they did it. So why is it derogatory if they did it? Because they didn't do it all the other years. So the Rebbe says, what's the big deal? Not the Rebbe, the Tosfos already. The Tosfos read Rashi. They were his grandchildren. So they read Rashi. And he says, what's the gnut? What's the big deal? So Tosfos writes that the big deal is that it said in Parshas Bo, in chapter 12, verse 24 or 25, I don't remember which one. It says that when Moshe commanded them to do the Pesach in Egypt, the next time you'll do Pesach will be in the land of Israel. So it's understood to be that that was a stipulation. It was one of the conditions of the Pesach. You could do one now, Pesach Mitzrayim, but the next Pesach is supposed to be in Eretz Yisrael because you're supposed to come out of Egypt, go to Mount Sinai, get the Torah, and go to Eretz Yisrael. Next one's going to be. So it's not just. So you could read it as maybe it's just a description. The next one is going to be in Eretz Yisrael, but it wasn't read that way. How do we know it wasn't read that way? Because here in Baaloscha, in chapter 9, verse 1, he had to tell them, make a Pesach, meaning that it wasn't clear that they needed to make a Pesach. Why were they still there, though? Why weren't they in Eretz Yisrael? No, we're long before the Meraglim here, because of the golden calf. Because of the golden calf, they were stuck there until Yom Kippur, until Moshe came down the third time, and he brought the second luchos, and then he came down with something new, which was you need to make a tabernacle. You need to make the Mishkan. That they made until Kislev, until the end of Kislev. And then Hashem told them on the 23rd of Adar to begin constructing it every day and taking it apart. So on the 1st of Nisan, they finished, and then they did the inauguration of the altar and everything else. And on the same day, what did Hashem say to them? So since you're here now, make a Pesach. So why is that a gnut? Because why are you still here? You weren't supposed to be here. So it's remembering the Chet HaEgel. Mm-hmm. So that's the Tosfos. That's what and Tosfos makes sense because that's what Rashi said that it's a gnut. This is what the gnut is. So why are we saying all this? Because really, each one of the Chumashim starts with something that has to do with the Jewish people, at least by Rashi. He sees every one of the Chumashim as something that is geared directly towards the Jewish people. So from the second and on, it's easy. In the first one, he says, Bereshit, Bishvil Yisrael shenikru Reshit. That in the beginning means for the beginning, and the beginning refers to the Jewish people. So all 5 Chumashim. So what about this one? So the census. But he says it was a better option. The better option was that they made the Pesach. But it would have according to the Tosfos, this would have reminded us of the Chet HaEgel, of the golden calf. So they didn't put it in the beginning, even though chronologically it happened before the census. The census happened in Iyar. This happened in Nisan. Why am I saying all this? Because the Rebbe doesn't accept the Tosfos answer. It says it's very nice that you're Rashi's grandchildren, but doesn't fit in Rashi's language. And it's true, it doesn't fit. If you look at it, you'll see it doesn't fit. It says there's a different reason. What's the reason? The reason it's a gnut, the reason it's a derogatory, is because right after they made the first Pesach, there came people who were defiled, who couldn't eat from the Pesach, and they came to Moshe and they cried out and they say, why should we lose our part in the Pesach, in the Paschal Lamb? We also want. So Moshe Rabbeinu says, okay, so I'll go and ask Hashem. And they got Pesach Sheni. So says the Rebbe, we've been unable to make the Pesach for 2,000 years. Nobody's crying out, we don't want to lose out. He says that we see from the Parsha that the moment that you cry out and you say, I don't want to lose, I don't want to be left out, then Hashem finds something for you. He says, what can we say? He says that's the derogatory. Why? Because they were in the desert for 38 years, and they saw that the first time when somebody cried out. After the sin of the spies, there were another 38 years. There you can't say Hashem forgave them because they were there for 38 years until they would be forgiven. And yet, you already saw that Hashem provides something, so you can do the Pesach. So says the Rebbe, that's the whole message there. That it's derogatory, because you see from the precedent that you can always cry out to Hashem and ask for leniency, for some kind of solution. And when it's a mitzvah, Hashem will find a way to do it for you. Anyway, so this all has to do with the 5 Chumashim being the 5 voices. It's one of the simplest explanations. That the 5 voices that the Torah divided into were the 5 Chumashim, and each one is geared at the Jewish people. And when the Torah enters into the person and it makes and it's full of love and it makes him grow, then he sprouts, he grows. And that's what we were saying the whole time, that's the intellectual soul that comes down every day like rain. That's what he wants to say. Then in the end, it's like the rains come down every day to make it grow. What grows? He says what grows really is the animal soul. So the relationship between the intellectual soul and the animal soul is like rain, or at least the Torah is the rain, and it comes down in droplets. And the intellectual soul is what gives it over to the earth, which is here the animal soul. והדרך מה שכתוב בדיבור מתחיל להזין לשמיים לגבי הרוב כמטר, שהתורה נקראת מטר וגשם שמוציא את כוח הצומח שבארץ מאלם אל הגילוי, דהיינו להיות הצמיחה בחינת אהבה בכל מאודיך, אין שם באריכות, וזהו ואהבת בגימטריה שתי פעמים אור, היינו בחינת אור אחד, אור זרוע לצדיק, והשני בחינת צמיחה בכל מאודיך. In any case, so that's the picture. ואחר כך, and after that, ועץ השדה ייתן פריו. And then you give fruit. What's the fruit? The fruit הוא בחינת מד מנפש האלוקית. And then, after there's growth from the earth, which is the animal soul, then you get, after the intellectual soul has done this, it's made it grow, then you get a new type of awakening, which is an awakening from above, from the divine soul. And this is incredible what he's saying. Mad מים דחורים. Masculine waters. Why suddenly masculine waters? Because that's how the masculine works. The divine soul is masculine relative to the animal soul, which is feminine. So when you see that the feminine is awakening, it's growing, there's a more awakening in the divine soul. It wants to give more. Meaning, what's it saying? It's saying the animal soul is now becoming frum. It's interested now. Look, it's growing. The same thing that happens in a family. When does the husband finally become a husband? When the wife's pregnant the first time. Then he starts becoming a husband. Until then, he's still taking care of himself. But now he has a wife who's pregnant. Now I have to think about it. Now we really have to build a home. Now there's something else. And it's true. You start getting your act together. I remember when my wife was pregnant the first time, and I said, I have to finish Shas now. I have to finish Rambam. I have to do this. I have 9 months. Quickly. So I went on a treadmill to start. Not that it mattered at all, but I was like, but that's the masculine waters. And so, the same thing as by the earth. The earth brings up man, the feminine waters, and the rain that comes from above is what makes it grow with masculine waters. And what does it mean? It means that there's 2 types of waters. There's the waters that begin the growth, and there's waters that make the fruit. It's like 2 different things altogether. The Gemara discusses it in Tainus. It's 2 different types of water altogether. The first type of water is just for the growth of the tree, let's call it, or the plant. And then the fruit is from a different type of water that needs to come. And there's a whole discussion. We had recently a mimer that talked about these 2 types of water. You remember? Maybe I wasn't here. Somewhere I taught this not long ago, that there's 2 different types of water all the time. They always talk about 2 different types of water. The types of water that cause... And it says that, for instance, that in Egypt, there's no masculine waters at all. Meaning the second type of waters that make fruit don't exist. It's all from the Nile, so it's all feminine waters. So all that Egypt gives out is kigana yarak, is a cucumber patch. Like it's only vegetables. But to get fruit, you have to have this second type of water that comes down. And it's a whole thing about, they used to have, I don't know even how it works, but the Gemara discusses this, that they used to know which plots of land got which type of water.
That's liberation.
No, even when they used to water a grove of trees, fruit trees, with water from a wellspring, they knew which type of water this wellspring was. Is it the feminine waters that are coming from below, or is it like they call the water that doesn't go very deeply, and it just trickles out? I don't remember what you call that. It's not. Yeah, but there's a name for it. I don't remember what's called. Anyway. וכדכתיב כאשר ירד הגשם והשלג מן השמיים, כמו כן על ידי חיבור מים ובן הנ"ל ייתן פריו, היינו שיתגלה בחינת טובא דגניז בגבי. And this type, this whole idea is that the earth is full of goodness. That's what we said about the letter tet, tuva ganuz begave, that the tet looks like a serpent. It's actually the shape of a serpent, and it's curled over itself. So in the beginning, it looks to you like it's a serpent, but really what it's doing is it's concealing within itself the goodness. So at the beginning, it looks like it doesn't want to have anything to do with you. The ground's very tough. It's very hard to work, especially in Eretz Yisrael. The ground is all like rocks and there's no good earth, only in the valleys. That's why people plant in the valleys, because there's actually earth there. But on the mountains, on the hilltops, it's like there's no ground left. It's all been deteriorated over the years, washed out. So anyway, so when you have a connection between what we call mayin ban, the masculine and the feminine, then it gives its fruit. Then you see the goodness of the earth coming out. The same thing is true about a person, about a Jew also. The same thing, that there's goodness inside, but you need the intellectual soul, which is like the first type of water that comes down, in order to awaken the animal soul. And then you see that the animal soul is actually very good. It's not negative at all. That's what we want the animal soul, because the animal soul has tremendous power. It has the power of growth. And these are what we call the 288 sparks that are in it. But it's concealed and it is enclosed, and it's according to the verse that the evil person is like the crown of the tzaddik. But machtir here is he surrounds it. Completely surrounds the tzaddik. You have to get through the hard shell in the exterior, and then what you get is the fruit on the inside. And then you see that actually what's in the ground is greater than what's coming from above. And it's becoming what we call the woman of valor is the crown of her husband. And actually then it reveals a state which was never broken. This whole thing of Rapach Nitzotzin is because there was a shattering of the vessels. That was in the Sag, it's called. Without getting into the whole Ari, but it's all the world of Tohu was built from the Sag. And above Sag is Ab. There's a name 72. There's a name that equals 63, and the name that equals 72. There was never any blemish there. Nothing ever happened there. It's not true. There was also something happened, but it doesn't talk about it. But in any case, it's considered to be above the Shvira. It's above the shattering and above the reconstruction. So when the growth comes from below, meaning the only way for me to get to a state above the shattering of the vessels is through my animal soul. I can't do it through my divine soul. And that's the thing that people don't know. That's why the Baal Tshuva is always higher than the Tzaddik. The Tzaddik is like a Sag de Sag. He's like a rectified Sag de Sag. But he can't get to the place where there was no breakage. That only the Baal Tshuva can rise that high. That can only be done through the animal soul. That's what it means that the rain will go down and do my bidding. Because it's considered as if that when he's learning Torah in this way, he's learning with Hashem. Hashem himself is the one who's teaching him. And that's why he can get to this incredibly high state, which is beyond the shattering. But this all depends on the intellectual soul, the tzelem that a person receives every day. Every day, it's like, that's what, the idea here is that every day it rains. It rains every day inside the psyche. Inside the psyche, that's the intellectual soul that's coming anew every day for me, and it can water the animal soul, and from the growth that comes down, the divine soul then rains down, And that allows the animal soul to become the crown of both of them. And it goes beyond both of them. The fruit that it gives is from a higher source than both of them. Okay? So that's just my